The news. Hello there and welcome to the English program of Radio Algeria International. First, the top stories on the news. The President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense, Abdelmajid Tebboune, chaired on Sunday a meeting of the Council of Ministers devoted to the draft law on the organization and development of physical and sporting activities and to presentations concerning several sectors of activity. Army General Said Changriha, Chief of Staff of the People's National Army ANP, presided over on Sunday the graduation ceremony of the 6th class of the Advanced War Studies course. Here in Algiers, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Immunity Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, today inaugurated the second round of the Algerian-Italian Strategic Dialogue on the bilateral relations and global political and security issues. These are the major developments in the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. This is Mohammed Badazwan reporting. First in our news file, the President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, chaired on Sunday a meeting of the Council of Ministers devoted to the draft law on the organization and development of physical and sporting activities and to presentations concerning several sectors of activity, according to a press release issued by the Council of Ministers. Miriam Ziad has more in this report.
At the start of the meeting opened by the President of the Republic, the agenda and the Prime Minister's report on the government's activities over the last 2 weeks were presented. The President of the Republic gave the following instructions, guidelines and directives. The Council of Ministers approved the draft law on the organization and development of physical and sporting activities aimed at developing and providing a better framework for the various sporting disciplines at national, regional and international level. Concerning preparations for the 2024 Olympic Games, the President instructed the Minister of Youth and Sport to meet all the conditions and mobilize all the necessary resources to enable our athletes taking part in this world event to carve out a place worthy of Algeria's image and reputation. Concerning the creation of medical school annexes, the President stressed the need to provide the necessary support to raise the level of higher education and scientific research. Enrollment in the annexes of medical faculties should be subject to the same rules and conditions adopted in the central faculties. The aim of this procedure should be to facilitate access for students of scientific specialties, reduce the burden of central faculties, and improve the quality of training. Regarding the role of Algerie Post in supporting the widespread use of financial services and electronic payment, the President of the Republic has given guidelines for improving the level of services and working to overcome all the technical problems relating to internet speed. Work towards the widespread use of fiber optics by the end of 2024. The President stressed the importance of cybersecurity, an issue to be treated as a matter of national sovereignty, to be preserved by the children of Algeria among the national skills and energies, with a view to adapting the changes occurring in this field. Concerning the strategy for using water from purification plants for agricultural, irrigation and industry, the President has ordered the development of a well-defined and well-founded plan to take into account the following indicators: a precise determination of the level of water recovered according to the purification process, and a definition of needs at national level. A technical inventory of all the treatment plants that are out of order and those that are in service in each commune and province, with a view to determining production capacities. Include the sector's mechanization development needs in the government's program, prioritizing provinces with no wastewater treatment plants for irrigation purposes rather than drawing on groundwater, which is classified as a strategic reserve. Set a target of 40% of water recovered in the short term to be used for agricultural and industrial purposes. Finally, and following the presentation by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the national community abroad on the situation of our community, the President emphasized the extreme importance that the state attaches to constantly listening and addressing the concerns of our community through diplomatic channels in the context of the commitment of the President of the Republic to work to improve the living conditions of the Algerian community in various socio-cultural areas, and to facilitate the return of Algerian skills and executives, particularly in favor of conditions conducive to a promising economic takeoff that will benefit the Algerian people. In this context, the President of the Republic praised the achievements of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in maintaining communication links and strengthening ties between our community and the mother country. At the end of the meeting, the Council of Ministers approved a number of decrees concerning the termination of functions in senior state posts and positions.
In other topical news, Army General Said Changriha, Chief of Staff of the People's National Army ANP, presided over on Sunday the graduation ceremony of the 16th class of the Advanced War Studies course, named after the Shaheed Hamdawi Hamidou at the Higher School of War, the Ministry of National Defense said in a press release. William Zian again.
On his arrival, the Army General was welcomed by Major General Ali Sidan, commander of the 1st Military Region, and the Major General Hamid Fakan, director of the school. After the welcoming ceremony, the Army General held a meeting with the senior staff and trainee officers, where he gave a presentation on the outgoing class before delivering a keynote speech in which he expressed his most sincere congratulations to the military personnel and to all the Algerian people on the occasion of the celebration of Eid al-Adha and the National Independence Day. He went on to highlight the attention paid by the ANP High Command to training at all levels and in all specialties, with particular reference to the Higher School of War. On this occasion, I would like to offer you and all the Algerian people my most sincere congratulations on the occasion of Eid al-Adha al-Mubarak. Likewise, on the eve of the celebration of the 61st anniversary of Independence Day and the recovery of our country's national sovereignty, I'm pleased to express my best wishes to you and to all the personnel of the ANP, praying to God to perpetuate the benefits of security, stability, and progress for our country, and to confer our ANP under the leadership of the President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, Minister of National Defense, the means to strengthen its power and operational readiness, enabling it to fully accomplish its constitutional missions, in particular defending the security of the country and its citizens. We are convinced that this readiness rests essentially and above all on the human factor, imbued with national and republican values, highly qualified by the scientific and military training received and aware of the stakes involved in the quality of work in order to face the challenges that lie ahead with the necessary efficiency and professionalism, the Army General also emphasized.
هي القناعة الثابتة والراسخة في أذهاننا التي تجعلنا دوما نمنح لقطاع التكوين بمختلف مستوياته وتخصصاته وفي مقدماتهما المدرسة العليا الحربية كل الاهتمام والرعاية والإمكانيات بالنظر لطبيعة المهام التعليمية والتكوينية المنوطة بها وبالنظر أيضا لمسعنا الرامي إلى منح هذه المؤسسة العلمية الرفيعة بعدها المستحق الذي يليق بسمعة الجيش الوطني الشعبي وبالمكانة المتميزة للجزائر إقليميا ودوليا.
This conviction, said Army General Changriha, is so deeply rooted in us that we have always ensured that all levels and specialties of training, particularly of the Higher School of War, are given the necessary attention and resources, taking into account not only the nature of the teaching and training missions entrusted to us, but also our approach in this area, which aims to give this scientific establishment a high level of expertise.
Here in Algiers, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, today inaugurated the second round of the Algerian-Italian Strategic Dialogue on the bilateral relations and global political and security issues. The meeting, held at the foreign ministry's headquarters, was attended by the Secretaries General of the Algerian and Italian foreign ministries. On the occasion, the Algerian diplomacy chief, Ahmed Attaf, said that last year witnessed positive signs that bolstered the two countries' will to pursue their efforts in order to meet all the strategic goals defined by Algeria and Italy. The foreign minister insisted in his speech on the good relations existing between the two friendly countries and on the prospects for promoting development and peace in the Mediterranean basin.
يمكن القول أن العلاقات الجزائرية الإيطالية تمر اليوم بأحسن أحوالها بفضل ما تم تحقيقه من مكاسب جديدة تعزز الشراكة الاستراتيجية بين بلدينا الملتزمين قولا وفعلا ومنهجية ومقاربة بمعاهدة الصداقة وحسن الجوار والتعاون التي احتفلنا مطلع العام الجاري بالذكرى 20 للتوقيع عليها. ومثل ما سبق وأن أكد عليه رئيس الجمهورية السيد عبد المجيد تبون، فإن الجزائر حريصة أشد الحرص على توطيد أركان هذه الشراكة الاستراتيجية في المجال الطاقوي عبر التزامها بدورها كممول موثوق إقليميا ودوليا.
Mr. Attaf said, "We are keen to intensify the interpolitical dialogue to enshrine a strategic consensus that unifies the positions of our two countries regarding the rapid changes taking place on the two banks of the Mediterranean and which reinforce our relentless efforts to contribute to resolving regional and international crises and make secure and stability prevail whenever means are made available." Let's listen to Mr. Attaf again.
إننا نحرص كذلك على تكثيف الحوار السياسي البيني لترسيخ التوافقات الاستراتيجية التي توحد مواقف بلدينا إزاء التطورات المتسارعة على ضفتي البحر الأبيض المتوسط والتي تعزز مساعينا الدؤوبة للمساهمة في حل الأزمات الإقليمية والدولية ونشر الأمن والاستقرار كلما توفرت السبل والظروف.
Mr. Attaf said, "I would like to stress that Algeria was about to occupy its position as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, starting from January 1st, 2024, is aspiring to strengthen its role in promoting cooperation between the two shores of the Mediterranean and to live up to the current challenges because Algeria is convinced that partnership is the only guarantor of peace and security and development in this region and beyond." Let's listen to Mr. Attaf again.
العلاقات الجزائرية الإيطالية تمر اليوم بأحسن أحوالها بفضل ما تم تحقيقه من مكاسب جديدة تعزز الشراكة الاستراتيجية بين بلدينا الملتزمين قولا وفعلا ومنهجية ومقاربة بمعاهدة الصداقة وحسن الجوار والتعاون التي احتفلنا مطلع العام الجاري بالذكرى 20 للتوقيع عليها.
Mr. Attaf further said, "The relations existing between the two friendly countries are good, thanks to the gains made so far, and which contribute to reinforcing the strategic partnership between Italy and Algeria, which are linked by the Treaty of Friendship, Good Neighborliness and Cooperation, whose 20th anniversary was celebrated early this year." In other topic news, the proceedings of the Constituent General Assembly of the International Association of Friends of the Algerian Revolution began on Monday here in Algiers in the presence of participants from several sister countries. The opening of the meeting, which coincides with the end of the celebration marking the 60th anniversary of the regaining of national sovereignty and the 61st anniversary of Independence Day, was chaired by the Minister of Mujahideen and Rights Holders, Laila Biga, in the presence of the advisor to the President of the Republic in charge of Reserved Affairs, Mohammed Shafiq Masbah, and members of the government. The opening of the meeting was also attended by the former President of Mozambique, Joacim Chissano, and several representatives of the diplomatic corps accredited to Algeria. The Minister of Mujahideen and Rights Holders, Laila Biga, supervised on Sunday in Algiers the official launch of the mobile application History of Algeria 1830-1962 to mark the end of the festivities celebrating the 60th anniversary of Algeria's independence and the 61st anniversary of Independence Day under the slogan, "The Algeria of Victories, Achievements and Accomplishments." Let's shift now to the Western Sahara file. The Izquierda Unida United Left, Federation of Spanish left-wing parties, has reaffirmed its position in favor of the Sahrawi people's legitimate right to self-determination, condemning the human rights violations committed by the Moroccan occupier in the occupied territories of Western Sahara. Miriam Zian has more in this report.
In its program for the Spanish general elections on 23 July, the IU reaffirms its position of support for the Sahrawi people and its legitimate representative, the Polisario Front, in its exemplary struggle for self-determination and independence for Western Sahara, Europa Press reported on Saturday. In the same program entitled Working for Peace and submitted to Sumar, a left-wing coalition led by Yolanda Diaz, second vice president of the Spanish government, Izquierda Unida, which is part of this coalition, condemns unreservedly the Moroccan occupier's repression of Sahrawi civilians and its human rights violation in the illegally occupied Sahrawi territories. The group now joins Sumar, which at the end of June reaffirmed its position in support of the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. I quote, "We maintain the position that we have always defended. We support the self-determination of the Sahrawi people within the framework of the United Nations resolution," said Ms. Diaz. As a candidate for the presidency of the Spanish government, the current Minister of Labor was also keen to point out that all the members of Sumar support this decision with regard to Western Sahara. According to Europa Press, this coalition has affirmed that its position is based on respect for human rights, a criterion that will govern relations with Morocco, as its spokesman MEP Ernest Ortasson has said. Ortasson stressed that defending the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination was one of the points that would be clearly addressed in the electoral program. Sumar's position on the Western Sahara will be unique and coherent, based in particular on the defense of the self-determination of the Sahrawi people in compliance with the United Nations resolutions and the mandate of MINURSO.
The Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic SADR took part in the proceedings of the 5th African Union-European Union Ministerial Conference on Agriculture held at the headquarters of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, in Rome, Italy. The meeting addressed a number of important issues, including sustainable investment in food systems and agriculture, the search for efficient policies and techniques, and the climate resilience of agriculture and climate systems to ensure complementarity in regional trade, the Sahrawi press agency SBS reported on Sunday. The participants also stressed the need to find clear and effective strategies to meet the challenges in this field, which is heavily impacted by the Ukrainian crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, and desertification. At the closing session, reports were presented on the various topics discussed. The meeting culminated in overall recommendations from the proceedings of the 5th Ministerial Conference, which will be submitted to the next FAO conference. In the Palestinian equation, the Palestinian Foreign Ministry condemned the brutal attack carried out by the Israeli occupation forces against the Palestinian population of Jenin in the West Bank, which killed 2 people and wounded 27 others. It was quoted by the news agency Wafa as saying that the attack was part of Israel's policy aimed at imposing a logic of force in its relations with the Palestinians instead of finding solutions to the conflict. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry said it held the Israeli occupation authorities fully and directly responsible for the acts of aggression targeting Palestinian civilians and their property. It urged the international community to take action and to break the silence over the heinous crimes perpetrated by Israel, which must account for its actions, it said. Earlier, the Palestinian presidency reiterated that the region's security and stability could not be restored unless the Palestinians' own security was not ensured. The presidency spokesman, Nabil Abu Rudaina, affirmed that the acts of violence perpetrated by the Israeli occupation army in Jenin were part of the war waged against the Palestinian people. Elsewhere, 5 people were killed and 11 others wounded in Dombao in northeastern Nigeria in a terrorist attack. On Friday evening, a large number of assailants tried to invade Dombao but met with fierce resistance from the militia. a paramilitary corps that helps the Nigerian army, according to two commanders of a local anti-terrorist militia. The 5 killed were buried Saturday, whereas the injured were evacuated to the regional capital, Mogadori, by helicopter. In other news, the European Union and the Organization of American States have expressed their concern over the suspension of the results of the first round of presidential elections. The Constitutional Court, the higher jurisdiction of the country, has ordered the Supreme Electoral Court in Guatemala to temporarily suspend the official election results of June 25th. 2 days after the election, the European Union had warned against the deteriorating of the rule of law and the legalization of electoral events for political reasons, highlighting the strong engagement of citizens for democracy and civic rules. The Organization of American States has called on the legislative, judiciary, and executive power on the state to respect the partition of the power, and as well as the proceedings and conclusions made in this process. Let's note that Guatemala is one of the most unequal Latin American countries, as judges in World Bank has 10.3 million inhabitants living under the poverty line. You are still tuned to Radio Alger International. Now I invite you to listen to the second part of edition with one timely broadcast on schedule. I wish you fun listening.
Algeria, faithful to its principles and its policy of non-interference in the internal affairs of countries and the peaceful settlement of conflicts since the recovery of national sovereignty on 5th July 1962, has made a strong comeback on the international scene in the last 2 years through its support for just causes and its active participation in the resolution of regional and continental crises. Since the crowning of its revolution by the recovery of full national sovereignty 60 years ago, Algeria, through a strong and committed diplomacy, has established itself as a credible, listened to and sought-after voice on the international scene, and has never ceased to develop its actions in favor of peace and the liberation of colonized peoples. Admitted to the UN in October 1962, Algeria has committed itself to working for peaceful cooperation between all countries on the basis of mutual respect. It established diplomatic relations with almost all countries in the world, and its contribution was never lacking when it came to dealing with complex situations that required both courage and discernment. The full support that Algeria has given since 1962 to the just causes and liberation movements of the colonized countries is a permanent element of its action on the international level. And it is also thanks to the decolonization movement, particularly in Algeria, that the UN General Assembly has enshrined the right of colonized peoples to independence. Moreover, Algerian diplomacy has distinguished itself throughout history by the constancy of its positions and the performance of its actions, which has given it a leading role in the resolution of international and regional crises and conflicts based on a number of foundations and principles that constitute its doctrine, such as non-interference in the internal affairs of countries, thus making Algeria a vector of peace and stability. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, met on 5th July in Algiers Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and the head of the political bureau of the Hamas movement, Ismail Haniyeh, on the sidelines of their participation in the festivities marking the 60th anniversary of independence in a historic meeting after a cold for several years. This was followed by the hosting of the Reunification Summit aimed at putting an end to the divisions of the Palestinian ranks, which was sanctioned by the Algiers Declaration providing for legislative, presidential and national council elections within a year. This initiative is in line with Algeria's constant and honorable position, which has never ceased to support the just Palestinian cause. Always through intense diplomatic activity, Algeria has, since the outbreak of the Libyan crisis in 2011, called for dialogue, rejected foreign intervention in this country with which it shares a long border, and especially warned against the risk of extending the conflict to the entire Sahel region. As regards the crisis in Yemen, Algeria made a point of calling for dialogue between the Yemeni parties while recalling the principles of its foreign policy based on non-interference in the internal affairs of states and the refusal of foreign intervention in internal conflicts. Algeria applied the same diplomatic doctrine to the old Malian conflict until it reached a historic agreement in March 2015 between the different parties in conflict in this other border country. Still on its borders, in Western Sahara, Algeria has always favored the peaceful voice of dialogue between the two parties to the conflict, Morocco and the Polisario Front, for the organization of a referendum on self-determination for the Sahrawi people in line with international law and relevant UN resolutions. In the same African and Arab sphere, Algeria, which has regained its role as a pivotal state on the African continent, has also been asked to contribute to the mediation efforts to settle the dispute between Egypt and Sudan and Ethiopia over the Renaissance Dam built by Addis Ababa. The successful organization of the 31st Summit of the League of Arab States, hosted by Algeria on 1st and 2nd November, is certainly the best example of the returning force of the Algerian diplomacy on the international scene. In an international context marked by polarization and the resurgence of the specter of confrontation between Russia and the West as a result of the war in Ukraine, Algeria has not only demonstrated its attachment to the principle of non-alignment, but also to active neutrality for having tried to play a mediating role through the Arab Contact Group. This earned it the respect of the various belligerents, Russia, which appreciated Algeria's balanced position, and the United States, which emphasized a strong partnership. Finally, in its redeployment, Algerian diplomacy has also worked to establish strategic partnerships such as those currently underway with China and many African and Arab countries, as well as with the BRICS group, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, whose economies are growing at the fastest rate on the planet and which Algeria has officially requested to join.